Okay. Actually, whoa. Who did you do? Okay. Okay, but wait. Talk. Because I told my friend's family. Um, don't quote anything. Don't lose anything. See.
It's not. Okay. You're good. Okay. Um, hello, everybody. Um, please feel free to help yourself to the dessert buffet that's in the back throughout the evening. Before we begin, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank this incredible community for the tremendous outpouring of love and support during Shiva. We are so grateful to be part of this community that is like family. I'd like to thank Simi Reichik for the million different things she did for us. The Weiss family for everything they've done for our family. Thank you, Simcha Pe'er, who helped us out with the Shloshim. And Rifki Markowitz, who made the flyers and who gifted us with the beautiful slideshow we will be showing tonight. Thank you all for coming here tonight to honor my mother and become inspired by the incredible woman, mother, friend, and educator that my mother was. From an early age, I realized how lucky I was to have been blessed with such incredibly kind, loving, and devoted parents. Parents who were true examples to us of giving of your entire self to others, to Hashem, his Torah and mitzvahs, to the Rebbe and Hasidic values, and bringing others to love and cherish Torah and Yiddishkeit as well. But our home was also filled with warmth, fun, and laughter, as my parents both loved life and lived their very short lives to the fullest. As my daughter said when she saw me writing this speech, there's no way to speak about Bubby that would do her justice. Whatever would be said would just not be enough. Whatever we do in her honor would not be enough. She said, we can make a massive parade in the streets and it still wouldn't come close to being enough. This was something her young granddaughter understood. She saw who my mother was and what my mother did. She saw my mother's selflessness as she constantly showered everyone with love and kindness. She would go food shopping for her house and would remember what each of us, her children, her sons and daughters-in-law, and most of all, her grandkids enjoyed most. On her way home, she'd pass by my house and say, "Adi, come down to the car. I went to Costco or Weston Kosher, Trader Joe's, and bought your Shelly the potato chips that he likes, Ita her lemonade, guacamole for Laser, and something I had in my house that Levi said he likes." She was selfless, always thinking about others and putting them first. If one of our kids was sick or struggling in school, she would not sleep at night and spend her waking hours worrying about it, trying to help us find solutions, pushing us to advocate for our children and get them all of the medications, therapies, assistance that they needed, and also to try to give them extra advantages. Someone once told my mother that once your children are grown up and married and move out of your house, you'll have less to worry about. She said, no. Now I have an extra child I have to worry about, their spouse. And when children came along, now I have children, their children to worry about too. It's endless. My 12th grade graduation speech was about gratitude to our parents. I knew I could never possibly repay my parents for all they had done for me, but I was grateful for the opportunity to publicly thank them. At the end of my speech, I introduced my mother, who was chosen from all the parents to speak on behalf of them to the graduates. I said in my speech, "It is fitting that my mother be chosen for this role because she has been a source of guidance and love to many of my classmates. Many of my friends practically lived in our house, and years later, they told me that when they became wives and mothers, they decided to model their homes based on what they saw in my parents' house and be the mother for their kids that my mother was." But it wasn't only my classmates. I had watched over the years how my mother became a mother to so many people whom she just cared for and loved like her own children. I ended my graduation speech with the words, "If one day I could be half the woman and mother that my mother is, I will feel accomplished, for that is my dream and goal." Since those teenage years, my goal has remained the same, and it is something I'm constantly striving for. My dream, however, has recently changed. I dream that I won't have to remind my children of how special their Bubby was, because we will all be reunited with her again really soon with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Kryman via video, a world-renowned speaker and educator par excellence and friend of my mother's, who will share with us some Divrei Torah.
In Kislev of 1991, Mira and I were in the hospital together. We had both had baby boys the same week. And my baby boy was very sick. He was in the NICU. And actually, Mira's baby was there for a few days, so we talked a lot. 2 months later, in Shvat, for Chaf Beis Shvat of 1991, Mira and I were both on the same flight. We went to New York. And I remember that we waited in 770 for almost 5 hours. That was the year that the Rebbe gave out the Kavitz Chaf Beis Shvat, which is a beautiful pink booklet. Here it is, a pink booklet for women, which had messages about the strength of women and Geula. And I remember that I waited, and the whole time I was preparing that when I come in front of the Rebbe, I'm going to talk about my baby and ask for a bracha. And when I got to the Rebbe, I couldn't say anything. It was just, the moment was very overwhelming. And the Rebbe gave me the kavitz, and it had a $5 bill in it. And that was the last time I saw the Rebbe. A little over a month later was Chav Zayin Adar. The Rebbe had the first stroke. And the day after that, my baby was nifter. And I remember thinking for a long time that I came to the Rebbe and the Rebbe didn't answer me. But when I learned the kavitz, I realized that the answers are there. The Rebbe gave us so much strength. And this is a booklet that I've gone back to again and again and again for strength and for direction. We're not living in easy times now. And people are crying out, and they're saying, why? Why do we have to suffer so much? Why does it have to be this difficult? So I saw a story about the Ramban. The Ramban had a student, a young student, who had a lot of questions. Why does Hashem do it like this? And this young student was very sick. And the Ramban, before the student passed away, the Ramban gave him a kameah. and told him that when you get to Shemayim, take this kameah and tell the malachim that you want to get to what they call Kisleis Lemishpat. It's a chamber of chairs of judgment. And there you can ask, find out all the answers. The student passed away, and sometime later the Ramban was working, and suddenly this student appeared at the window. And he told the Ramban that after he passed away, he had taken the kameah with him, he had shown him, and this kameah had actually gotten him access. He was able to go up into the high chambers, and he came to Kisleis Lemishpat, the chairs of judgment, and he was ready to ask, like, why did I have to die so young, and why is the world so difficult? But he said that when I got to that chamber, there were no questions. And, we want answers, but really the best answer of all is that which takes away the question altogether. So we have this knowledge, this knowing of a bigger picture where we'll have the answers or we won't have the questions anymore. But for right now, we're here, we're in a reality where we're dealing with the day-to-day. So how do we get through this? How do we find the comfort that we need and the guidance that we need? So for me, it's this. We're in the parashas now where we talk about the difficulty Golus Mitzrayim. And when the Yidden went out of Mitzrayim by the sea, the men sang Shira, and after that, the women had their own Shira. Miriam Hanaviah led the women in a Shira, and the question is why? Why did we need another Shira? And the Shira of the women was different. It was dancing, and there was musical instruments. It was even happier than the men. Why wasn't as Yashir enough? Why did we need a second Shira that was led by Miriam? So the Rebbe speaks about Miriam, and this is Mira's Shloshim, so I'm thinking a lot about Miriam. Miriam was named Miriam because of the root of mar, or mirror, bitterness. And really the reason was because Miriam's entire lifetime was, till she left Mitzrayim, was when the slavery was really very, very strong. From the time she was born, there was 86 years of shibud. So it was from when Miriam was born pretty much until like the year before they left Mitzrayim. So her entire being, from the time she was born till right before they left Mitzrayim, was when the slavery was very strong. So that was bitterness. So Miriam really symbolizes this time of bitterness and heartbreaking difficulty. And yet Miriam is also about Nevuah. Miriam was, as a young child, it says that when her father, it says a man went from the house of Levi, and Rashi explains, and Mefarshim explained that this was Amram, because of the Gezerah of Parai to throw the boys into the river, Amram had separated from his wife, and because he was a leader, the other Jewish men had also separated from their wives. And Miriam went up to him and she said to him, why aren't you bringing Jewish children into this world? You're worse than Parai. Because Amram had been thinking, what was the point of bringing children into this world if they're just going to die? And Miriam said to him, you're worse than Parai. Parai is decreeing against the males. You're decreeing against the males and the females. Parai is decreeing death in this world. You're decreeing death in both worlds. Parai is evil and you're righteous. And so Amram listened to his daughter. She was a little girl. She was 5 or 6. And he reunited with his wife. And the other men followed his example, and families came back together again. And she gave Nevuah, and she said that there has to be a redeemer that will be born from my parents, and this will be Moshe, and he will redeem the Jews. And when Moshe was born, the house was filled with light. And Amram kissed her, and he said to her, my daughter, your Nevuah has been fulfilled. 3 months later, the Egyptians were looking, searching for the babies to throw them in the river, and the baby had to be put into the river. And it says that Amram slapped her on the head and said, my daughter, where is your Nevuah now? And she went with Moshe, and it says that Miriam stood in the reeds, and she waited to see what would be, where was the Nevuah? Not, am I wrong? And what's going to happen? But I know that there's a Nevuah. And it says that she stood in the river to know what will happen to him. Meaning, I know already, but to know how it's going to play out. And it says that she stood there. Miriam stood with certainty. It wasn't a question. It was knowing how it'll happen, standing there, waiting and believing, an unshakable belief. This is the Nevuah. This will happen. So we really have both with Miriam. We have the bitterness. All the years of her life in Mitzrayim were bitter, and that was her name. And it was the time that she was in very, very, very great hardship. And we also have the vision and the belief, the firm conviction and the waiting for Moshe Rabbeinu, while he was in the water, watching him, waiting for the geula to come, the awareness of it. And it might seem to be opposites. On the one hand, you have the bitterness. On the other hand, you have the vision of geula. But the Rebbe says no. The Rebbe says in this booklet, which I got from the Rebbe's hand, which Mira got from the Rebbe's hand that same night, which thousands of women got, the Rebbe said no, they're connected. The women felt the gullus in a very, very deep way. And because of that, the women's joy was so much greater. And that's why they had their own shira. They had music, which they had prepared. And they had their dancing because they understood the preciousness of it because of the bitterness. Women feel deeply. And the pain can pull us down so much, but we also have tremendous ability to trust, to believe, to hope. When things are hard, it gets very, very difficult to find our way forward. And we need perspective. Like, how do we look at difficult times? It says that Rabbi Akiva wrote that the Yidden are different with the Yisurim than the Goyim. It says that with the Goyim, when they have good, they honor and they thank their gods. And when they have difficulties, they curse the gods. But the Jews are different. When Hashem does good to Bnei Israel, we praise Hashem. When Hashem does suffering, gives us suffering, we praise Hashem. And there's different reasons, but of course it's the belief in the bigger picture. But part of it also is a recognition that through the Yisurim, through the difficulty, we come to our teshuvah and we come to our greatness in Hashem. And just on a personal note at this difficult time, because so many people are reaching out and saying, I don't know who to trust. I don't know who to believe. I don't know how to find a way to feel safe. One of the things that really, really helps me, Corona in general has forced us to pull inwards, to look back at our family, to go back to basics in many ways. And now everything that we've relied on for a long time, the systems, the police for protection, or the medical community for answers or for care, or the government for guidance, a lot of that has gone very, very shaky, and people are afraid and they're saying, I don't know where to trust. And back to basics is a good way to go. And one of the areas that gives me tremendous strength and comfort is to look at the words of davening, to really see what are we saying every day when we daven. And if we can see what we're saying, we will gain tremendous comfort. We will find our way forward just by looking at what it is that we are acknowledging and asking for. If you need some tools for davening, contact me privately. I have some tools that can help you. So Miriam, Mira, bitterness, and at the same time, bigger picture. I want to share something that Mira taught me. 10 years ago, I was sitting Shiva for my Yossi, and Mira showed up. Lots of people showed up, but Mira didn't just come. Mira came, Mira style. She brought a big bag. She brought me chocolates, good ones, and she brought me a bag of puzzles. And she told me that when you're having trouble sleeping at night, these puzzles are very good, kind of like these word puzzles and books. A bunch of them she brought me. And Mira was going through a very, very difficult time at that point. And I remember that she just looked at me and she had that awareness that the nights might be difficult and this is something that you can do. And, you know, sometimes we think it's so big. What can we do? You know, here I was sitting Shiva for a son. What possibly could help? And yet Mira showed up with chocolates and puzzles. And you would think, well, isn't that ridiculous? But it isn't, because there was an understanding there. There was a giving. And we should never assume that in the face of something so big, it won't make a difference if we give something small or if we try. The puzzles and the chocolate, it's 10 years later, and I'm still warmed by the love, by the effort, by the understanding. So we hear a lot of stories now. People are really, really inundated. This tragedy and that tragedy. It's not easy times. And we think, what difference will it make? I can't give millions of dollars or thousands of dollars. I can give a few dollars. Do it, give it. I can't fix situations, but I can pick up a phone and call and speak to someone for a few minutes. I can give chocolates and puzzles. And yes, it makes a difference. Give. It says that the be'er, the well in the midbar was in the Shloshim of Mira. There was the Anani HaKavod, the clouds, there was the man, and there was the be'er. So the clouds were in the Shloshim of Aaron, and the man was in Shloshim of Moshe, but the well was in Shloshim of Miriam. And they knew that because when Miriam passed away, right away there was no water. What's the connection between the well and Miriam? So it's interesting that, first of all, it says that Miriam had a strong connection to water. She stood by the water, and she watched Moshe, and again by the water by Kriyas Yamsuf. But it's more than that. It's also that the water is chesed. Like we saw that, we knew that Eliezer knew that Rivka was kind. when he saw her drawing water. And in Chassidus, it explains that everything in this world, the light of Hashem, comes down in this world by the actions that we do down here. So when we look at the situation in the world and we think, it's so rough, there's such hard times, we can actually change that. We can actually bring an infusion of kindness into this world. We can bring infusions of holiness into this world. And Chassidus, it explains that the spheres are like channels, like pipelines. And when we learn, for example, when we learn about the halachas of tzedakah, so we're drawing down the energy, the force of chesed into this world. And when we do an action in this world, it's actually a two-way, it's actually a street. It's called like the roads, the ways of Torah, because when we do an act of chesed, we generate an action that sets off a light. Not only that we draw it down, but it goes back. It goes both ways. Basically, what it means is that when we do chesed, chocolates and puzzles or whatever chesed we do, we actually set something big in motion. And the well of Miriam, it's a giving, it also symbolizes a well because of its connection. It's from down and we pull it up. It's a yearning to be close to Hashem. And the well was actually created in twilight of that first Erev Shabbos. Twilight is, it's not night, it's not day. It's kind of like the period now. It's not Gullus. We're hoping it's the end of Gullus. It's not yet in the full light of Geula. This well, this giving, this connection, this yearning is very strongly connected to Miriam. So in honor of Mira, let's do something. Let's generate acts of chesed. Everything in the world sets off another reaction, and we can actually access channels of chesed of Hashem by doing chesed to others. We can actually change the way things are. And it has such a strong impact. And during Hanukkah, when we were all saying Tehillim for Mira, so we had a, over the phone, Corona-style, gathering of Torah, Tefillah, and Tzedakah for Mira. And I taught a little bit of Chassidus there. And afterwards, somebody called me, and she allows me to share her name. It's Deveri Goldstein. And she told me that just hearing about Mira, she wanted to share a memory that when she was 13 years old, Mira and Zlata, her sister, were counselors in the Long Beach day camp. And Deveri Goldstein's mother was the camp mommy. So she was very involved with the counselors. And Deveri would, like as a little kid, kind of schlep along. And Mira took her under her wing. And Zlata took a different girl under her wing. It's now 50 years later. And she's telling me, more than 50 years later, and she's telling me that she never forgot the care and the kindness. Because this is what Mira did. She took people under her wing. See, I spoke about chocolates and puzzles, but Mira really gave in a very big way, in a very quiet way, in a very elegant way, but she took care of people. And I was thinking about how Deveri Goldstein picked up a phone to tell me about what Mira did for her. And I think, we tend to hold on to memories of things that hurt us or things that upset us. But how often do we look back at a memory of somebody who did us a kindness and cherish it and just think about it and pass it forward, pay it on to someone else, do something more. So there's another lesson from Mira, not only the bitterness and the hope, but the giving and the acknowledging. And we see also with Miriam Hanaviah, she was Pua. She was one of the midwives, and her name was Pua because she would help her mother, and she would make cooing sounds to the babies. She would nurture the babies. But the Mefarshim say also that Pua comes from Hofea, which is to stand up strong, because they stood up against Parai. So we have again the opposites, just like we have the bitterness and the view of the Geula and the trust. We also have this gentle nurturing, and at the same time the standing up. And in Mitzrayim, we had it with Yocheved and Miriam, with Shifra and Pua. They were not afraid. Parai was a king. That was the powers that be. And here you have a young girl, and she's not afraid to stand up and say, this is wrong. And we think about it in history. This is a very important time for this lesson. How many times have we had terrible things done by people who are, what was the quote? I'm just obeying orders, or we see it now a lot, people following the way, the new language, the new cultural norms, and not to be afraid. On the one hand, we have to be nurturing and kind, like the midwife, the cooing and the giving. On the other hand, right is right and wrong is wrong. And from Miriam Hanaviah, we get this power. We have the ability to stand up and to say, this is not the right way, not to be afraid. And we need hope now. We need strength now. This is important. Mira was a positive person and always, with a smile and looking for good. I'm thinking about how quickly things can change and how we have to hang on to the belief that what's right in front of us is just a very small piece of it. I remember it was February and I was traveling and I was listening to an Israeli podcast and they were saying that this coronavirus that they found, this was beginning of February, it's starting to be a problem in China. And then I remember at the end of February, I was coming back from that long trip and I was listening again to the Israeli podcast and they were saying they suspect now that it's actually worse than the Chinese government has been letting on. But still, I haven't actually seen what the virus could do. Not very many of us have seen the actual virus. Some have, but most of us have not seen the actual virus itself. We've seen the effects of it, but we were starting to believe that it was there, but it hadn't impacted me yet. So it was just something that was sort of in the background. Little did we know a short time later how much the virus would become a reality in so many of our lives. And I'm thinking the same thing can be in a force of good, that there's something that's kind of there and we hear about it, but we don't realize the full impact till later. And we see so many examples of this, things that the Rebbe said that we didn't realize until later. And here's one. I was reading recently because Israel now is in the process of making miraculous peace treaties. And one of those peace agreements is with Morocco. So I was reading a story about Reb David Buskila. He was a rabbi in Casablanca in Morocco. And he writes how in the 1960s is when he met Chabad. He met Rabbi Yehuda Raskin. And he writes about his great admiration for Chabad. Rabbi Yehuda Buskila was the head of a network of schools. He has a strong Sephardic background, but he had tremendous respect for Chabad. And he writes that he actually envied their Mesiras Nefesh. And Rabbi Raskin asked him to translate, told him that the Rebbe wanted to translate Tanya into Arabic. So Rabbi Buskila answered him that, first of all, he was very, very busy. But the other problem was he was worried. He said it's a difficult thing to do. And that he quoted the translator of the Rambam, was Yehuda ibn Tibun, who wrote that to translate something properly, the person needs to be an expert in the topic that he's translating and also an expert in the language into which he's translating. So you can be sure that the concepts are translated correctly. And he was nervous about this. Rabbi Buskila's son writes that the Rebbe actually wrote a letter to him. That's his father, asking him to do this. So Rabbi Raskin suggested that if they learned the Tanya together, that might make it easier. So they started to learn Tanya together. And they did this for a long time. And Rabbi Buskila's son writes that his father used to come home and every Shabbos he would give over the Tanya that he was learning. He had 10 children. And his son writes how he remembered how his father would tell them that without Tanya, you don't really know if you're serving Hashem the right way. And it made a very strong impression on him. And Rabbi Raskin in time began to nudge him, is it time to start translating? And eventually they did. They started to translate. And they translated quite a bit of the Tanya. And then in 1980, Rabbi Raskin brought Rabbi Buskila with him to New York for Yud Shvat. And they went to a Farbrengen, and then they had a Yechidus. Rabbi Buskila speaks about this Yechidus, and he writes how he was filled with such awe when he saw the Rebbe, like he was seeing a malach, and he couldn't even look up. And the tears were flowing from his face. And the Rebbe said to him, do you know what you accomplished when you translated the Tanya into Arabic? And he said, yeah, it gave him the opportunity for people who can't understand Tanya, they can understand it now. And he said also that he said to the Rebbe, I think that, I'm trying to think if I have the story right, but he said to the Rebbe that his understanding was that somebody before Tanya, it's like he knows Hashem the way a child would know Hashem. But now that he studies the Tanya this way, in Arabic, somebody who knows about Hashem before he learns Tanya is like a child knows Hashem. But once he learns Tanya, he begins to know Hashem in a whole nother way. And the Rebbe said to him, yes, but also the translation of Tanya is to break the klipa of Yishmael, to break that negative energy. And the Rebbe said to him, you are breaking the klipa of Yishmael. And Rabbi Buskila's son writes that before he got married, he went to the Rebbe with his kala. And the Rebbe looked at him and asked him if he's the son of Rabbi David Buskila. And then the Rebbe told his kala, he said, you know that thanks to Rabbi Buskila, his father, Yochassan's father, is bringing the Geula closer. And he said, because it's written that in the end of days, the strength of Yishmael, of the Arabs, will be felt all over the world. And we just have to have a look now and see the strength of the Arabs, of Yishmael, will be felt all over the world. But by translating our holy books into Arabic, we can counter their power. We can bring Mashiach faster. So I'm thinking about this is something that the groundwork was laid and we weren't aware of it, but it was happening all along. Tonight it's Mira's Shloshim and Miriam So much we can learn. We can learn, first of all, not just to see the bitterness, but to see the picture of what can be better and bigger. We can learn to give small ways, to give in big ways, to recognize how important it is when we give to someone else, to recognize and acknowledge what's been given to us. We can learn, like Miriam and Avia, to stand up, right is right and wrong is wrong, and not to be afraid. And we can learn to trust. Things look hard now. There's a lot of pain now, but there are also a lot of things in play, and we don't see the whole picture. And it's our job to do what we need to do and to remember that there is so much good. We just can't always see it right away. And Mira was the kind of parent that when any of her kids had trouble in school, she was there right away. She's a Yiddish mama. A Yiddish mama never stops being a Yiddish mama. So I know that Mira is up there and she's asking for her children. And I like to think she's asking for a community as well. She's looking at us. She's seeing what we need. If we need chocolates or if we need puzzles, if we need Mashiach. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming. It really means a lot to me and my family. I spent the last week and a half trying to take my mother and do the impossible task of putting her on paper, making a speech out of her whole life and everything she meant to me and all of us. I hope I can do her a little bit of justice. When we were growing up, we were privileged to have our grandparents visit us many times. Every time they came, they would bring us lots of gifts, which made us very excited and were suspiciously exactly what we were into at the time. It was only later that I realized that it was my mother who went to the store before they came, bought all the gifts, and snuck them into their suitcases. When we were extending our house, my mother redid a room and specifically designed the room and bathroom with a seat in the shower for my grandparents. This was all while her own bathroom remained with the design, look, and feel of the early 1900s. Growing up, I often witnessed my friends who, like most teenagers, were shy and embarrassed of their parents. I could never relate to that. Whenever my mother joined us on an outing, it just made that outing infinitely better. She was the life of the party, and people were just drawn to her. So much so that even after I got married, my friend would call me to meet up and ask that I bring my mother along. Another friend asked if the three of us can go out one night. I asked my mother, and she said that night didn't work for her, and I should just go without her. But when I called my friend back, she said, "Okay, so let's reschedule for when your mom can make it." My friends would also always call my mother for marriage and parenting advice. After seminary, I had the honor of working with my mother. I watched her teach with genuine warmth and love. She would often say when teachers would come to her for advice that the most important thing is to just love the kids and everything else will fall into place. She told me personally that when I start a new school year, I will quickly realize that there are certain children that I will naturally click with more easily because I'm human and some personalities just match up. But as a teacher, she said, you have to immediately get to work forming and forging a connection with the other kids so that each child is equally and endlessly loved. My mother was known as Mira, not only because that was her 9-to-5 job, but because that's who she was. She was a teacher, she was a nurturer, she was love. This love extended to people of all ages. She had a way with kids. She had a way with teenagers. She had a way with young people, and she had a way with old people. She was just objectively awesome, and people that met her were instantly smitten. It's not exactly a universal phenomenon to love your mother-in-law, but my mom was different. When I got married, my husband quickly came to appreciate my mother's awesomeness, which came in the form of his often asking for advice. Many times she would call me and ask, Mushki, what happened with that and that issue? And I had no idea what she was talking about. And she would laugh and say, oh, guess he didn't tell you yet? He would consult my mother before consulting his wife. He let me say that. My mother was extremely devoted, not only to her kids, but it extended to her grandchildren as well. When she would talk to them on the phone and they mentioned something that bothered them, I would get a text the next day asking if the problem was resolved long after me or said child even remembered anything about it. My mom had a really difficult life. She lost her identical twin sister, her parents, her brother, and husband in a really short span of years. And then she got cancer herself. But anyone who saw her would have never guessed. She was full of life, humor, and purpose. She directed a school, taught in the classroom while directing, and went through chemo treatments, all without missing a beat. She didn't let her life's troubles drag her down or even slow her down. She was really fast. Working near her was difficult. I'd be like, Ma, you're making me look bad. I only did 1 and you did 60. She taught us that a life half lived is no way to live at all. And those lessons became much more relevant for us now. It is from her example that we draw inspiration to live fully, to love passionately, and to laugh early and often. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Hadassah Weiss, a dear and longtime friend of our family. She is a mother and grandmother of students of my mom's, from one of the first to one of her last.
Hi, good evening. How can I begin to express what I feel about Mira? Most people here tonight know Mira in the context of being the incredible educator that she was, or the unofficial Rebbitzin, or the second mother to so many. But I will always know Mira and love Mira primarily as a friend. Mendel and Mira moved here in 1981, a few short years after Marty and I moved here. They originally came here to work in Yeshiva Oral Chanan Chabad, an institution that Marty and I were involved with and remain deeply committed to. They were one of the many young Chashuv Chabad couples that moved here at the time to strengthen the growing the Lubavitcher community. Marty and I were on the other side of the coin. We moved here in 1978 as the first young Anash couple to return to Los Angeles. And for many years, our lives were intertwined. Mira, of course, established herself as a fantastic preschool teacher, and many of our children were classmates and our dear friends. And as her friend, living our lives and raising our children, I was able to see many times, in many ways, how her quiet strength, her fierce intelligence, her deep Hasidic roots as a daughter and a granddaughter of Hasidim and intellectuals enriched the lives of so many and strengthened our community in immeasurable ways. Her home was always open to friends and family and people here in Los Angeles who needed a second home and a welcoming place to land. And after so many years of learning with my father-in-law, Reb Errol Weiss, alav shalom, on a daily basis, I watched as a small minion in my in-laws' house turned not to such a small community, nurtured by Mira, and of course with Reb Mendel being our Rav. The success of our shul, whether you call it Beis Berel, Beis Menachem, or Oil of Ram, was due to no small part to the devotion and dedication of Mira, no less devoted to our community than she was to her ultimate labor of life, love, Zlata's Little Lights. And in one of the bittersweet moments of my life, I was especially emotional and meaningful to help Levi and Adi take over the mantle of being the Rav and the Rebbetzin for Armenian after the tragic loss of Reb Mendel, especially knowing how devoted my in-laws were to Mendel and Mira. In fact, the last time Mira and I saw each other was at this wonderful Purim party that the young Anash women pulled together at Judy's house. We sat and we marveled how many young families were there, that the days of our sons, Benzi, Nachum, Laser, Zalmi, and Sandy waiting around for a minion were long gone. We spoke about children and grandchildren and how lucky we are to have them live near us. And we spoke about our lives for the last time before the world shut down. Mira, as your friend, living our adult lives together, building institutions to hand over to the next generation. What will I do without you beside me, honoring your memory and watching your children, and surely as I know you're doing in Shamayim. Bala mavet lenetzach, u'macha Hashem dima me'al kol panim. Hashem will destroy death forever and will wipe the tears away from all our faces. With the coming of Mashiach, we will be reunited with Mira and Mendel, and until then, Mira, your life and your memory will always be a blessing. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is my cousin, Adi Schusterman. But since our mothers were identical twins, we like to say we were biologically half sisters. We had the same mother, just different fathers. She and my mother opened a beautiful school together, Zlata's Little Lights, Tiferes Menachem Mendel, after her mother and my father. Here is the co-founder and co-director of Zlata's Little Lights, my cousin Adi.
It was just after a few years that I moved to California, and it was my birthday. And I was feeling particularly homesick. My mother was the one of those people that never let a birthday pass without making it feel special. I was on the phone with her, lamenting my lack of family, when I heard a knock on the door. In walked Mira, holding a huge bouquet of balloons and my favorite cake. I immediately relayed this incredible joy and comfort that Mira had brought along with the balloons to my mother, who was still on the phone. My mother responded, Adi, Mira will be your best part about living in California. Oh, Mommy, how right you were. Our families were always close. Even though we lived across the country from each other, us in Maryland and the Labkowskys in California, we grew up together. We were the closest of cousins. My mother and Mira weren't just sisters. They were one heart in two bodies. When we would travel to New York for Yantif, more often than not, the cousins would be wearing the same shoes or shirt or dress, which both our mothers had unknowingly bought in Marshall's, Mira in California, my mother in Maryland. My mother would always say that unless she told Mira about something, it didn't really happen. So of course, we were close. After I got married, I moved to LA, and Mira became my boss. Anyone who has ever worked for her will tell you she is the best boss. She guided me and nurtured me. She gave me my space to grow while pushing me to be better. She made me love teaching. The Rebbe explains that education is Malach HaShemayim, heavenly work. It is one of the foundations of the existence of the Jewish nation. Mira took this to heart. She was the ideal mechaneches, educator, the one we all strive to be. Mora Mira was not only her title, but truly Mora Mira was her essence. Chinuch to her was not a job, but a calling. Each child is like a small sapling, a young tree. And although a young tree is fragile, it is also malleable. And while it is our ability as educators to shape this tree, there's a fine balance that we need to follow in order to do so properly. Mora Mira understood this because Mira just understood children. A sapling needs 4 things to grow: soil, water, air, and sun. Soil provides the essential nutrients while simultaneously providing stability and immobility. Mira gave each child the essential Jewish nutrients, values that every child needs. She didn't compromise on a single one and always gave them over organically. She was a strong believer in consistency and boundaries, continuously reminding those that asked her for advice that follow through is the key. Water is what dissolves the nutrients that are in the soil and then delivers them directly to the body of the tree. Mira stressed to us that learning needed to be with joy. There may be a million nutrients in the soil, but if the plant doesn't absorb it, it's all for naught. Mira loved joy, and she demanded that there be laughter in our classrooms. Because Mira, who lived through so much pain, loved to laugh. How extraordinary. She gave each child the air they needed to grow. Each child was an individual to her, and they were each given the space to grow to their own unique potential. Atmosphere to her was so incredibly important. Every classroom needed to be beautiful and clean, friendly and happy, and very colorful. The spiritual atmosphere was priority. Every Yantif and Hasidic Yantif was literally felt in the classroom. The excitement and joy of Torah and mitzvahs so clearly in the air. And sun, warmth. Do I even need to elaborate? Her warmth and unconditional love for everyone, students, parents, teachers, friends, maintenance staff, strangers. There was not a single person who didn't feel it. It radiated from her. It was exceptional. How lucky her students were. How lucky we all were. After my mother passed away, a new dream became the goal: to open a preschool that would be a reflection of her, a preschool named after her. A few years passed, and Mira's husband, my dear Uncle Mendel, passed away. Our dream became pressing necessary. Thus, Zlatz's Little Lights, Tiferes Menachem Mendel, was born. It was to be a nachas for them, a chinuch like they would have wanted, a place of warmth, joy, and family, where learning comes alive and Yiddishkeit and Hasidishkeit are tangible, where children are loved and cherished, where they're given all they need to grow into strong, independent trees that blossom. That was our goal. That is still our goal. For Mira, teaching was her joy, her comfort. She loved the kids and she loved the classroom. She taught her whole life through her marriage, her move to California, and the birth and raising of 7 amazing children. She taught through the illness of her husband, the deaths of her father, her twin sister, her husband, her brother, and her mother. She taught through her first bout of cancer and her second. She taught because she loved it and because the kids loved her. And although children were her specialty, her same unique brand of nurturing was bestowed on all who met her, on every single person in this room and anyone watching on Zoom today. Mira, how can I tell you what you've been to me these past few years? Yes, we have always been close, literally since my birth. But these past few years, you have been my partner, my guide, my critic, my advocate, my second mother, and my best friend. You have been my oak. You have nurtured me and grounded me. You've become, excuse me, you have become a piece of me, one that I'm unsure how to do without. I daven that I make you proud, that the enormous amount of love and guidance you have given me, the enormous amount of love and guidance you have given to all of us will bear an abundance of fruit, and we will be an achas to you. It is with this thought in mind that we announce a Torah campaign, a Torah written for Mira Mira, an alumni Torah, which we ask that every past and present student participate in and donate to, an eternal show of gratitude for the infinite effect that she has had on all our lives and all our children's lives. May we celebrate its completion with Mira herself in Yerushalayim. I'd like to introduce a close and longtime friend and exercise buddy of Mira's. She's also the grandmother of one of Mira Mira's students, Rachel Revere.
Good evening, Mira's family, and good evening, Mira's friends. It is my honor to speak with you tonight. Not only am I speaking this evening for myself, but I believe I'm speaking for all of us. To all of you, the family, and you are truly a remarkable, devoted, solid, and cherished family. Now I turn my remarks to the love and admiration we have all had for our dear friend Mira. As we know, this woman wore many, many hats. We know her as daughter, wife, ma, schwieger, Bubby, she so loved that the best. Sister-in-law, sister and in-law, aunt and cousin, Rebbitzin, Mira Mira, of course that was big, and co-developer of Zlat's Little Lights. We happily and proudly call her our friend. Of course, it was our good fortune if she would call us friend back. Friendship naturally creates a bond, and people could feel that bond with Mira. Mira nurtured generations of students. Think of her early students, how they later on had their children, and people became loyal to her. They'd say, "Hi, Mira," all the way across. These were the tatis and the mommies, in addition to their children who were standing there with them. She instilled love and loyalty and gave it back. It seemed like merely knowing her enriched our lives, and she was there to help with our well-being. Mira was the kind of friend who would get you going on the right path. And sometimes that was even to protect ourselves from ourselves. Mira was one of those people willing to give you advice, even though it might not be what you wanted to hear. She certainly helped many of us learn more about ourselves. She was a good motivator and supporter, as a real friend would be, and certainly helped many of us learn more about ourselves. The Rebbe spoke about friendship. While at Sunday Dollars line, he responded to a young man seeking advice on spiritual matters. After replying to his question, he added the following remark, I quote, "An important aspect of well-being and one of the greatest gifts in life is to have a true friend." In Pirkei Avos, we are taught an important lesson about friendships. Designate for yourself a teacher and acquire yourself a friend. The word acquire, which the sages use in relation to friend, teaches the importance of investing time, effort, and energy in creating and maintaining lasting friendships, end of quote. Simply put, everyone needs a friend. The kind of friendship Mira gave us taught us so many lessons that you just weren't going to find anywhere else, like how to understand yourself better, how to trust others, how to be calm, how to stress less, making you feel mentally stronger and confident. You'd come away from a conversation being together happier to have had interaction with her. With close friends like Mira, it was an opportunity to love somebody else besides your family. I recently read an article referencing 4 essential qualities of a true friend: understanding, empathy, honesty, and loyalty. The first 3, of course, are self-explanatory and fit beautifully with Mira. Friendship with Mira could teach us a lot about loyalty. It helped us to become loyal and enjoy her loyalty in return. There is no question that then there is a greater feeling in the world of having a friend who is loyal to you, who's got your back. All these character and qualities are what made Mira's essence so rich, and at whatever level of friendship it was, whether it was you were a new friend or a BFF, she helped us live a better life. Looking back, we didn't realize much of it at the time, but a better, richer in life was precisely what she was giving and offering to us through her friendship. Let me briefly tell you how Frank, my husband, and I first came to meet the Labkowskys. It was in the late 80s, and after moving to Hancock Park, our friendship really didn't blossom until there became a shul at the home of Beryl and Miriam Weiss, of blessed memory, and under Rabbi Mendel Labkowsky's leadership. Our family will cherish the many sukkahs, yamim tovim we shared over the years. I will make anything chocolate for her. I will forever think of her when I make chocolate slices of heaven, pate. She was always so appreciative, but that was just her nature. She could make you feel like $1,000,000. Several years ago, Mira and I were in fact in group aerobics class together, which allowed us to see each other weekly. I guess sweating binds you together also. That frum group is still going on, although several of us have bowed out and I have retired. We also shared a love of swimming, and more recently, Mira thoughtfully invited me to join her daily morning lap swimming and aqua aerobics, which, along with Haya and maybe Adi and maybe Ita at Laser and Luba's house. It turned out, it seemed to me, that the resident Labkowsky kids could hardly wait to wake up, and we're talking 6 a.m. and cold. And even little darling Doba, all they did, they came out to greet Bubby at poolside. They came out, all likely in pajamas, maybe eating breakfast, oftentimes walking up and down the side of the pool, just have a chance to speak with her while she swam. They brought her school papers and art projects and maybe the new clothes for the Yom Tovim and things to see and share and stories to tell. I saw her totally in her glory, just being engaged with them and vice versa. I later learned that she also had grandkiddo pool time regularly with any and all of them on Sunday afternoons. That was joyous Bubby love in its happiest form. Sorry. This past year, Mira gave me support during a particularly tough time with a health concern, ones that we shared. And boom, in the middle of that ordeal, she called up and had an impromptu birthday party and said, along with Adi and daughter-in-law Haya, we had such a fun time. We didn't know we were making memories. We just knew we were having a good time. We all expected we could do it again next year. And now it is next year. And it was this month. And here we are. Being her friend gave me a better life. She helped so many of us have that. In closing, dearest Labkowsky family, please let all of us that knew Mira now be friends with all of you, her living legacy in this world. It is essential to hold firmly onto the happiness, the love, the admiration, and respect we all had for her. You may always and forever be proud of the kind of friend she was to us and with us. Anytime one could be with her, we knew it would be a bit more special. She was the epitome of an Ashes Hayel. May Hashem comfort you and all of us on the road ahead. Thank you.
I'd like to call upon Diane Hajjaj, a dear friend of ours who is a part of the French community that my father and mother worked with to strengthen Yiddishkeit in their shlichus of the Rebbe. Little disclaimer, thanks for introducing me as a representative of the French community, and apologies to the French people here whom I have not consulted before. I hope you will all agree with my words. The night we heard the news, I was speechless, and it reminded me of what Rabbi Kupfer of Maimonides said during one of his shiur shortly before Pesach a few years ago. He spoke about being speechless and how it's usually related with a state of shock. He said Moshe's speech impediment was tied to the suffering of the Jews in Egypt, and it only went away when the Jews were freed. I think every one of us here have suffered a blemish in our hearts that will only go away when we too are freed from exile. That night, I wanted to hold on to Mira's souvenir a little longer, so I went on the Facebook page of the group of Rav Mendel. I expected to see pictures, but I did not expect to see how much Mira had been a part of our lives for the past 8 years. All these pictures took a whole new dimension because I could see Mira had been with us at every major event.
We didn't see her very often or speak with her very often, but we were so always looking forward to seeing her at our women's circle gatherings that she took so much pride and put so much effort into organizing before Rosh Hashanah, before Shavuot, and during our family gatherings for Purim, Hanukkah, and Lag BaOmer. Everything was planned to perfection, and she truly helped create lifelong memories with our children. Most French people here do not have any relatives in LA. Mira and her beautiful daughters and daughters-in-law became that family, an extended family, the one you don't need to see very often, the one you never fight with, the one who is always there for you, who's always eager to see you and hug you. Mira would fill you up with so much warmth. It just felt right being around her. And that's why I decided to sign our little one at Zlata's Little Lights. When Mira called me to tell me a spot had opened up for him, I was thrilled, and it remained one of the highlights of last year. Amidst the confinement and the chaos in our house with all the kids on Zoom, knowing that our little one would be protected with Mira come September was truly lifting up my spirit. And even after, first of all, when she called me to give me a tour, I arrived at the tour and I asked myself, why am I even here? Of course I'm in. Where do I sign? I don't need a tour. And even after our son was acclimated, I'm the one who didn't want to leave. I would run into Mira in one hallway and Rav Laser in another hallway. And I'm the one who wanted to stick around all day. I was so much looking forward to seeing Mira every day. The day after we heard the news, I spoke with my friend Jessie, and we shared the same feeling. The last time we had ever experienced such pain was when we had lost a close family member. And after reading all the messages of support, I realized that so many people felt the same way. Not only relatives, but also friends from all over the world, school parents, teachers, former students. She made each and every one of us feel so special. She touched so many lives. And whenever we would walk into a room, it was as if we were the person she was waiting for. Later on, when I visited the family during the Shiva, I was a bit reluctant at first because these are never easy moments. And yet, when I got there, again, I didn't want to leave. I ended up being one of the last ones to leave. And I went back another time. And I told my friend Joelle, that's weird, I usually avoid those gatherings. Why am I here again? And she told me, it's totally normal. When you go to a perfumery, everything smells so good around you, you end up leaving smelling good. And I felt like this is exactly the same when we're around the Labkowsky family. When we're around you, we feel elevated. When we study with the Labkowsky family, we absorb sparks of Kedusha. And when we leave, our souls are yearning for more. That's why I'd like to honor Mira by thanking her children. Thank you for allowing us to be involved in your lives. Thank you for sharing so generously your parents and your knowledge with us. I feel like you've lent your mother to us, and it's a loan we can never repay, but we can offer guarantees to try and support you in every way you wish to support, to honor your parents' legacy. Just as we knew we could always count on Rav Mendel and Mora Mira, I hope you know you can always count on us. Last but not least, I'd like to conclude with what I've read last Shabbat about Parashat Shemot. Rabbi Sachs notes that on the surface, the parasha is about the birth of a hero, Moshe. But deep inside, it is a story about 6 heroines, 6 courageous women without whom there would not have been a Moshe: Yocheved, Shifra, Pua, Zipporah, Batya, and Miriam. Rabbi Sachs writes, they were leaders because they had courage and conscience. They refused to be defeated by circumstance. They were the real heroes of the Exodus. Their courage is still a source of inspiration today. Despite everything Mira had been through, she had the courage to organize our events, and she was so dedicated to them. She opened a new school on top of the many obligations she already had, and she always did it so beautifully with a smile. May her courage continue to be a source of inspiration for us.
Simi has been a good friend of mine for many years. We grew up together, and she had become a really close friend of my mother's. She's one of the kindest and most generous people I know. Simi Reichik.
A while back, Mira and I went out for dinner. When I picked her up, I remember telling her how good she looked. She shushed me in her regular way, and our conversation started. During dinner, I said, "Mira, really, you look good." I tried pinpointing to myself, what could it be? Her makeup, the color she was wearing, the earrings. Finally, I said, "Mira, it's the earrings. Where are they from?" She said, "When I get home, I'll send you the link." I never got the link, but I did get the box of the exact earrings in my mailbox a week later. Mira radiated beauty. It was not the color she was wearing. It wasn't her makeup, or it wasn't her earrings. It was her love for her children, her obsession of her grandchildren, her dedication to every single student and parent, and her loyal friendship. That was the beauty I saw that night. For those of you who know me, I don't speak in public. So when AD asked me if I would speak tonight, my first thought was, you've got to be kidding me. Then I remembered the time I asked Mira to speak, and that's exactly what she said. Me? Public speak? You've got to be kidding me. But she stepped up to make my life easier, because that's what Mira did. She made my life easier in any way possible. Just this past summer, everything was going crazy with COVID. Decisions opening and closing camp changed daily. Mira reached out numerous times to ask me what she could do to help. When it was 2 weeks to camp and I still didn't have a head counselor, I asked her if she would do it. I was serious. I was desperate. In her enthusiastic and witty voice, she said, I quote, "Simi, you want a senior citizen to be your head counselor? I can't even do one jumping jack." When I came home from seminary, my dream job was to work with Mira. That didn't go as planned, but I did get to sub for her once or twice, and there as an adult, I was able to witness the legendary love, care, and warmth that Mira had for each and every student. I anxiously looked forward to the day my children would have Mira. Recently, my mother shared with me that when I was 3 years old, the principal of yeshiva, the school we all attended at the time, told my parents that he doesn't believe the school was the right fit for me, and they should look into an alternative school. Mira found out what he said and called my mother immediately and told her she believes I just need to be checked out by an ENT. My parents took me and the ENT confirmed what Mira already knew. I was fine, but the doctor said that my hearing was as if my head was constantly underwater. Some educators look for the easy way out, but Mira found the solution. Mira and I have a connection that can't be explained. When I was 13 years old, I went to an overnight camp in Detroit for the summer. This was before airport restrictions, and all our parents met us at the gate. It was me and about 10 Cheder Menachem boys, one of them being Glazer, long story. Every parent showed their ID and was handed their child. The problem was that I didn't travel under the name Simi Reichik. As much as my mother pleaded and tried convincing them that we looked so alike, the flight attendant would not budge and let me go to my parents. Finally, Mira came up to me, put her cheek to my cheek, and said, "Can't you see how much my daughter looks like me? I'm taking her home." She grabbed my hand, and that was it. We left. Mira has a deep place in my heart. I can tell you countless times when I was going through something, and she just knew. She knew when to text me. She knew what to say. Or when my heart told me something was wrong with Mira, and that night I found out my worst fears were confirmed. Our connection is something I can't put into words. I will always value our bond, and I will never let it go. Mira, I never got to thank you for the way you took care of me, the way you cared for me, the way you fought for me when people treated me unfairly, the joy you had when I got engaged like I was your own child. I smile thinking how you tried surprising me on my flight to my L'chaim in New York, but ended up on David's flight. I remember how tight you held me in the aisle and how happy you were. You didn't miss one day or night of messaging me and checking in on me numerous times when David was in the hospital, even though you yourself had COVID. I can never forget the joy that radiated from your face when I told you I was expecting. And then when Baruch Hashem Yassi, our precious baby, was born, you checked in and rechecked in to make sure everything was okay. You sent Nachum late at night to the hospital to bring Yassi his first warm blanket. You offered to cater the bris when the caterer canceled the night before. You saved the day by bringing plates when Instacart didn't deliver. You were the one I was able to call to bring me makeup since our colors were so alike. We laughed talking about Yassi being in your class and how lucky he would be, how I knew he would be treated like a grandchild. We know how good that was. You were always there for me to vent, cry, or laugh. When I was asked how we were related, which often happened, I was always flattered. I know we must have been related in the previous lifetime. The last time I saw you was on Sukkot. I was on my way to visit another friend. When I got to La Brea, I said to David, I must go to Mira. A heart feels a heart. You were tired and you weren't feeling well, but you came out of the room and made me feel like I had made your day. No matter how sick you were, every time I sent you a picture of Yassi, you would respond. I know it would brighten up your day. You loved him like your own grandchild. You laughed at my jokes even when they weren't funny. You always knew the right thing to say to calm me and make me feel like I got this. The last day you messaged me, you said, Simi, you're crazy. Stop already. Yes, Mira, I may be crazy. But no, I will not stop. We will not stop. We will storm the heavens until Hashem sends Mashiach so that you can be reunited with your children, your grandchildren, and all your spiritual children. And as you would always say, I love you more.
I just came to take this off. So we just heard throughout the evening, I'm not going to say a lot, but something about who my mother-in-law was and what she meant to her family and what she meant to all those people that knew her. And truthfully, if we wanted to even attempt to do justice to her, we'd probably have to sit through the night and then some. But at some point, we have to, I guess, get going from here. And we have to leave with something. It's beautiful to remember, and it's important to remember, but we have to take those memories and translate them into something ma'aseh b'poel, something practical, something actual. The Rebbe always said, ha-ma'aseh hu ha'ikar. We can talk and we need to talk, but at the end of the day, the most important thing is action. And I want to spend a few minutes talking about what that action can and should be, and what all of us sitting here can do to continue the work and the legacy of my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, my parents-in-law. And this is something which all of us can and should be partners in, because all of us were touched by my parents-in-law, and all of us have something that we can give to make a difference. But just before that, I want to just tie it quickly to the parshas that we're learning now. You know, the Yidden are in Mitzrayim, and in next week's parsha, they're going to come out of Mitzrayim. And what actually is happening in Mitzrayim? Why are we in Mitzrayim? So we know from the Navi Yecheskel that the Jewish people in Mitzrayim were being born as a nation, and birth is painful. When a child is born, there's pain. So Mitzrayim was a golus. It was difficult, it was painful. But when we came out, we were born as a nation. Am Yisrael, Bnei Yisrael, the nation of the Jewish people was born in Mitzrayim. We came into Mitzrayim individuals. We came out a nation. Now, if we look in next week's parsha, we see something a little strange. Hashem tells the Yidden to bring, in preparation for Yetzias Mitzrayim, to bring a korban Pesach. Now, we know when it comes to korbanos, there are two types of korbanos. There are individual korbanos that individuals bring, and then there are communal korbanos that the whole community together brings. The korban tamid, every day, there was one animal, and it was brought on behalf of the entire Jewish nation. It was a korban which united us all. So if Yetzias Mitzrayim is all about Leidas Am Yisrael, if this is the birth of the Jewish nation, we're no longer just individuals. We're coming together to form this new entity, a nation. What kind of korban would you think Hashem would tell us to bring? Certainly a korban sibur, a communal korban. All the Jews together should come together and bring a korban. But no, Hashem tells us that every single family should bring a korban. Ish selaveis ovei selabayis. The korban Pesach was not one korban on behalf of all the Jewish people. Instead, every family had to bring their own korban. And the Rebbe says there's a very important lesson here. And that lesson is the way you build a nation is one family at a time, one individual at a time. When you touch an individual and another individual and another individual, and then those individuals touch the next individual, the collective effect of that is you have a nation. But when you attempt to go for the whole nation at once, sometimes you end up with nothing. When I think about my parents-in-law, my mother-in-law, my father-in-law, and the approach that they took to their shlichus, and the approach that they took to their family, it's clear that they understood this message. The way they went about their shlichus, their work, was one individual at a time, one family at a time. And when they touched the person felt that they were everything. They meant everything. And over the course of time, slowly but surely, communities were built. Schools were built. And this is a lesson not just in shlichus, it's also a lesson in family. When you invest in each child as an individual, and you put everything into that child, and then that child grows up and does the same for their kids, Kenayin Hora, you'll see the peiros, you see the fruits of that effort, beautiful mishpachas. But it comes from having the wisdom to understand that you have to do this one thing at a time, one person at a time, one family at a time, and then over the course of time, you see the full effect of that. I think a lot of you do know, but we got to see it on a daily basis. My mother-in-law was an extremely busy person. Besides for her family, which was more than a full-time job, she also had the school, which was more than a full-time job. And on top of that, she also had another moised, which she effectively ran. This is maybe not so well known, but my father-in-law, a few years before he passed away, opened up a moised, which he called Beis Nachum, after his father. And after he passed away, my mother-in-law took over running this moised. And again, this was a full-time job. So she effectively was every day between her family and her school and Beis Nachum. She was an extremely busy person. Beis Nachum did a lot of things. Just to mention some of those things. Firstly, Beis Nachum had a gemach, which is a free loans, anybody that needs. This is still going on. Beis Nachum gave out before Yom Tov tens of thousands of dollars to tzedakah, to poor families, to help them pay for Yom Tov. This is things that people don't know. She didn't scream it from the rooftop. She did it. Beis Nachum arranged shiurim for all different groups of people, for teens, for men, for women. Beis Nachum arranged programs like Purim Sudas and Chanukah parties, gave out Mishloach Manos, matzos, mezuzahs, tefillin. It was a full functioning Chabad house. It was a moised that, my father-in-law started, and my mother-in-law took over, running it together with her children, her sons, Lazer, Nachum, Zalmi, maybe Sandy. And it's something which she put her heart and soul into. And again, she did this with the understanding that she didn't need to show anything fancy. She didn't need recognition. She didn't need to be in the front, the Chabad websites and the newspapers and the magazines. It was, as we said, she invested in people. Beis Nachum understood that the real nechosim, the real what counts is people. A shliach is all about people. Doesn't matter if you have the biggest, fanciest building. But the most important thing is the investment in people, and shlichus is all about giving to these people. That's the way that they saw it. So Beis Nachum was and is a full functioning Chabad house that's touched hundreds, if not thousands of lives, begashmius, and certainly beruchnius. And Beis Nachum is still very much active. Now it's being run by the family, by the children, and all of the work that was being done will continue to be done and more. But as good as that is, and as much as we said that my parents-in-law realized that the most important thing is investing in people and nothing else matters, my father-in-law did from time to time mention that it would be wonderful if Beis Nachum also had an actual building. So instead of having to, find a place to host this year and find a place to host that year and find a place to make a party here and there, if we can centralize everything in one building, wouldn't that be nice? And again, it wasn't maybe a priority because his priority was people, but it was something that he certainly would have liked, and my mother-in-law as well. So the family, which is committed to continuing this legacy and furthering this legacy and continuing the work, has decided, Be'ezus Hashem Yisbarach, that we are going to make this dream a reality. And Beis Nachum is going to go from a mosid, which was all about people, without an actual building to call home. We're going to become a mosid that has an actual home, an actual building, a beautiful building, the Shemel Tiferes, from where we can continue to run all of these amazing projects and pu'ulas and continue the shlichus of Beis Nachum to even further greater heights. So stay tuned over the next few weeks and months. As we said, this is our project altogether. We're all in this. The family is going to obviously spearhead the project, but the whole community can and should, and we hope they will come together to support this project and invest in this project. And Am Yirtzeh Hashem, with everybody's help, everybody's big help, we will make this dream a reality and will honor the memory of my parents-in-law with a beautiful, brand new, state-of-the-art, actual physical building where we can host all of the pu'ulos of Beis Nachum. So with Eibishter's help and your help, in a not too long, we'll be gathered again to dedicate somewhere in Los Angeles a beautiful building. We are just about done. I think the last thing we have is a siyum. We divided the Mishnayos to be learned over the Shloshim, so Sandy is going to come up and make a siyum.
I would like to thank everyone that took on Mishnayos. It was a collective effort. I think over 70 people took on various Mishnayos, Masechtas, Prakim, and we were able to finish. We were able to finish the Mishnayos tonight in memory of my mother. The very last Masechta is Masechta called Eitzin. And then the last Mishnah of that Masechta I will chazer over right now. Amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Asid HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'hanchel l'chol tzadik v'tzadik shlosh meh v'asara elamas. In the future, Hashem will bequeath all tzaddikim 310 worlds, entire realms, for every tzaddik. Shenemar l'hanchel oyav hayesh v'yitzer se'am amalei. As Mishlei says, my beloved will inherit yesh, which is Gematria 310, and I will fill their storehouses with fortunes. Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta. Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta said, "Le'matzah Kadosh Baruch Hu, kli machzik bracha Yisrael ela shalom, shenemar Hashem is li'am yitin, Hashem yivarech hasam v'shalom." Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafta says, God did not find a vessel worthy of holding blessing for the Yidden besides for peace. That was the ultimate vessel. As it says, Hashem gives strength to his nation. Hashem blesses his nation with peace. Hadon alach mesechas uktzin uslikalach shisha seder Mishnah. I'm going to have to say the Hadron. Hadron alach kostes im Nishon vadachal and dait nom so this kostes is the Mishnah vadachal and nisses im nach masachtas kostes is the Mishnah lesis im nam lebal name lebal dase Hadron alach kostes is the Mishnah vadachal and dait alach kostes is the Mishnah vadachal and nisses im nach Sisha said the Mishnah, the Sisha Nam Labama Dim Labama the Ase Hadon of Cosisha in the Mishnah of Adaklan, Diet and Cosisha in the Mishnah of Dietland, and Nisha in the Sisha in the Mishnah of Sisha in none, Labama Dim Labama the Ase, and Braga the Nether Never should the Hazer Rascom, the same Malam Haza, same Malam Haba, Hanina Bar Papa, Rami Bar Papa, Nachman Bar Papa, Achai Bar Papa, Abamar Bar Papa, Rafam Bar Papa, Rafish Bar Papa, Surcha Bar Papa. Ado Bar Papa, Dor Bar Papa. Harab no Adinela Hino is the Seres Hobafino, or Fear Sam Habis Israel, Nianacham at Tatsain with Tatsoy with Tatsoyam Habis Israel, Colonia Schmacham Lemner Sashli Shma, Maeva Takmin to Sahak Lelam Hilim, Yilibi, Samin Mukakaman, Eva, Shlaim and Ashkach Bodacha Kibam Chisani, Baruch Ato Adinelam, Dini Hukacha, Amen, 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 Salavoid. Maidam Anachman Lafanacha Adinel Hinam Levisinu, Samtach Kinam Yeshu Bisamarish, Samtach Kinam Yesh Binkarnes, Shanamashkim Hemashkim, Anamashkim the Versailles of Hemashkim and the Darmatalim, Anamalim Hemamim, Anamalim Makabam Sacher, Hemamalim in a Makabam Sacher, Anuratzim Hemratzim, Anuratzim Machaelam above Hemratzim of their Shachas, Shnamatam Terdim of their Shachas left in Nevan Heftachbach. Uratzim Lafanacha Adinel Hinuk, Hashem. Says our tunnel Lasayim, Kosisish in the mission of Kain Tazrain al Haskell himself to Sfar Machem, Lasayim, Lilme, the Lam, Lish from Lassus, or Kaim, Scott of Samud, Teresach of Avos, Huskal, Tanoim, Merem, the Summit of Haman, Yamid Lonu, Lazareno, Samash Hater Mipino, Omipi Zareno, Vizarino Adel, Sky Banu, Bisalach, Hatan, Chesach, Bushach, Hatishma, Alacha, like Tesa, Hisisichacha, Kivi, Yerbaimach, Visibul Hoshnes Chaim, Eirichem, Mina, Besmela, Shabachalid. Adonai is the Yamit and Adonai Varchasam and Shalom.
Thank you all for coming. Good night. And please help yourself to the food in the back. Everyone's very worried about the food in the back.